So right now, the major process for managing these ponds are the removal of the invasive and undesired species, and most of it are the plant species that are kind of growing in the typical waterbird habitat. And you can see a little bit here, but during the season when the birds are not nesting, I mean, we pretty much focus all our efforts in getting in here and managing it with machinery, with personnel, with flooding and filling ponds with water, and that's really how we suppress the vegetation. And that's kind of the key feature for this project, is that we get a lot of control over what's happening with the habitat. And if you look at other places in Kawainui, it's really difficult to get in there and suppress the weeds, and that's kind of the number one factor that's causing for the loss of habitat. And really what we get here is a closed system that we're able to intensely manage for the specific purpose of waterbird recovery, and I think it's really important. You kind of see the typical habitat that we have here. I mean, it has a pretty good mosaic of different kinds of plants, different heights, different kind of masses and water and mud flats, and that's really the kind of habitat that we're trying to create here. And having control over the water is really a key part of wetland management, and with this project we're able to do that, and I think the results can be really great. So we see a lot of new recruitment in bird species, and particularly the birds that we're targeting, the stilts, the coots, and the moorhens. And prior to this area was a pasture, and there really wasn't any habitat for birds. And so as soon as these ponds were built, and as soon as we started pumping water in here and getting some habitat work, then we've seen the populations of birds just really skyrocket. And the marker is when they start establishing territories and they start reproducing and they start breeding and they start fledging chicks, and that's really what we're trying to look for. As adults, they can fend for themselves. I mean, they can move and they can fly, but the goal for these projects are to provide areas for recovery, specifically for fledging chicks, and that's really the key to bringing back this population and bringing back a healthy ecosystem. Well, I mean, I think this is a good platform for awareness for Kawainui and for native species, and our plan is to bring a lot of people in here, community groups that volunteer to do restoration work. I mean, educational groups, schools, they can come and learn about what's really important and what Kawainui has to offer as far as waterbird species, as far as native ecosystem restoration, and even the cultural aspect of the species here. This system that we've created here is really a unique system as far as our typical restoration and management practices. And really when we look at wetland restoration and we manage areas, I mean, we're always enhancing habitat that's already there, ecosystems that are partially degraded and partially damaged, and we're trying to restore them to a condition where they can be really helpful for native waterbird recovery. In this project, we've actually created and we've built a wetland in an area that has changed over time, from an area that was a really natural ecosystem to someplace that's been filled in with both sedimentation and invasive species. So we've taken this particular area of Kawainui, and we've kind of turned it back into a wetland, and that's a really huge project for us, and that really kind of allows us to more intensively manage it as well. And so with the construction also comes some designs and some specific features here that make it easy for us to manage this. And the main feature, I think, is controlling the water. And you can see throughout the system is that we have features and we have infrastructure here built specifically to move the water around. And that's one of the things that we are not able to do in other wetland systems is control that water. And for wetland management, the water table and water cycle and water movement is really important. Is an important feature, and it kind of tells you what your wetland is doing, what kind of wetland you have, and what kind of production you can expect to get out of it. The real part of this project that is exciting for me is we're integrating technology and a lot of science into our management, and we're really utilizing the cyber technologies that are out there, and that's a new word that I learned in the partnership with the university. But we're measuring every part of this ecosystem, every part of the water, every part of the soil, and what's happening with the weather, and that's really giving us a picture, not necessarily an observation of what's happening, but an actual representation on paper with graphs and charts. And we don't ever rely specifically on numbers and on measurements to do our management, but it's a big help, and it helps us to explain what we're doing and make the decision-making process, and use the relevant data to create the best scenarios for what we're trying to do. And so that really allows us to spend more time doing observations. Our field biologists, our crews are able to go out there and kind of just get a feel and look at the area and be here and say, yeah, what I'm seeing is I'm observing things and I'm making estimations on what I'm seeing, and I can get the data to back that up, that my observations are correct, and and the way that we're managing the system and the direction that we're going is correct, and we have both field observations and science to kind of back that up, and I think that's a really innovative and new process that we're venturing into with this system. Priority for the Division of Forestry and Wildlife is waterbird recovery for this area, ecosystem recovery, waterbird species recovery. So, we're not saying that this is the model that we're going to follow throughout the marsh, but any project or any operations that we undertake is going to be specific for that purpose. So the plan is definitely to remove invasive species, to create the specific ecosystem that is going to provide the greatest benefit to the waterbird species. So, this is one way that we can do wetland management. It's a very highly managed product. The management is very intense. The cost is very high, but the benefits are great. And so we have models and we have other areas that we're working on, and we're doing more of a passive approach where we're trying to simply clear out invasive species, enhance the habitat that's already present, and hope the species can kind of utilize the habitat that's already there. And that is a more low cost and a more long-term solution for the amount of acres that's here in Kawainui. And that's really what is the limiting factor for our operations. Is there's a lot of area here, and there could be a lot of projects, but we have to make sure that we're undertaking those projects that can be managed for the long term. We spend thousands and thousands of hours here, cutting grass. You can stand here and watch the grass grow, and I think, that's the kind of system we're dealing with. And it benefits the birds in one way, is that because of the great climate and the great weather that we have here. I mean, we have this kind of we have pretty much a static weather condition, and unlike other wetlands in other places, we don't get that the changes in the seasons that naturally suppress vegetation and allow things to kind of settle back. And we have a constant period of growth and a constant flux of invasive species, and so we really need to control it all year round. And for us to walk away from it, and for us to not have a management plan that specifically deals with it, is going to just turn it into what it used to be in a matter of months. Basically, we rely heavily on partnerships, and the way I see it, we're managing this resource. It's in Kailua and it belongs to Kailua. So, we highly encourage the community groups, and not just from Kailua, but from anywhere, to come in and experience it. And that's really one of the ways that we can bring awareness to this place. Is, it's a sensitive area. It's a wildlife sanctuary. We can't just let anybody come in here and do what they want. But there are avenues and there are venues for people to be here, and appropriate times and activities for them to be doing. And so community outreach, education is really huge. And we have a program where these ponds are actually adopted by community groups, and they come in here on designated days, and they work and they help us with the maintenance. They help us with maintaining the pond's capability to aid in the waterbird recovery. And so it kind of gives the community a sense of ownership, and says, hey, this is my pond. These are our ponds, and this is what we're working for. And that's really the most beneficial to the division. We're a government agency. I mean, guys are here, guys are there. We get people come and people go. The community, they're always here. They live here. This is their backyard, and so that's really the key to the long-term preservation of this area.